In this video, I'm going to show you how to create these amazing motion graphics for your Reels in DaVinci Resolve. So right click over here and create a new timeline. Unselect project settings, go to format and use vertical resolution. Let's drag in our Fusion composition. Right click, open in Fusion page. From here, drag in a background and connect this with the media out. Now, while you have your background selected, press Ctrl Space and search for grid. Now, make sure you select this grid, which is just the grid. Don't select anything else. Add, click on add and make sure that this is connected. Now from here, change the row cells to 15, column cells to 15 as well, but change the major line spacing to 0 and change the red to 0.2, green to 0 and blue to 0 as well. Now over here in the zoom, I'm just simply going to change this to 1.05. All right, so if you zoom in, this is how it looks. Now while you have your grid selected, press Ctrl Space and search for radial blur. Now from here, change the smooth strength to 0.2. Now, if you zoom in, you will see this a subtle effect you will see. So let me just unselect this. This is how it looks without the blur. But if you click on this, you will see a slight difference. So just to add a dynamic look. All right, so we have our background done. You can go back to the main timeline and let's drag in another Fusion composition right above it. Right click on this composition and click on Open in Fusion page. Drag in a background, connect this with the media out, but change the alpha to 0. Now, while you have your background selected, click on multi-merge, make sure this is connected, and I'm going to add in a text. Now, I already have a text with some settings. I'm just going to show you, but what you can do is just drag this text from here. Now, when you drag your text, make sure to connect this with the multi-merge. Now, let me show you some settings you need for this text. Over here in the text box, make sure you add these dashes on your keyboard. You can just press these dashes from your keyboard, but make sure to only enter up till 30. Change the font to light. You can keep this at open sans, but make sure that this is at light. Change the size to 0.5, the tracking to 1.207. And the color, you can use this color code. Now in the layout, you need to change the type to path. And from here, you need to draw a path like this. So just as an example, let me drag in a text over here and let me just connect this. And let me just hide this for now. So for example, I have this text and let me add these dashes and change this to light. So go over to layout and change the point to path. And from here, you can just create a path like this. Just randomly create any path and you can simply just drag this and align this accordingly like this. And if you think that this is not looking like the one that I have over here like this, you can always go ahead and do some adjustments yourself. You can go ahead, add in some more dashes, or you can change the tracking from here. That's up to you. But this is just to show you how I did it. But since this will take some time, I have already done it. So this is how it looks like. Now I'm going to drag in another text and let's connect this with the multi-merge. And over here, I'm going to type in this text over here and the font that I'm using will be Montserrat at medium and the size will be at 0.2. And I'm also going to make sure that this H anchor is all the way to the left like this. And let me just move this right here. And let's go over to layout. And from here, let's change some settings. So the X will be at 0.167 and the Y will be at 0.542 like this. And over here at 0, go over to shading and create a keyframe at opacity. Change this to 0 as well. Now over here at 2 frames, bring this back to 1. So this is how it will look. And let's just zoom in. Now we're going to drag in another text like this. And let me just type in same font Montserrat, but this time this will stay at bold. And the size will be at 0.3. And let's go over at 5 frames. And over here, I'm going to create a keyframe at right on. And then at 0, I'm going to change this to 0. And let me just connect this with the multi-merge so that we can see this is how it looks. Now let's go over to layout, and from here, let's change this right here. And you can also change the H anchor for this as well, like this. All right, now I'm going to add in an image. So I have this image of a map. And before I connect this, let me just go ahead and add in a transform node for this. And you can simply just make sure you select this and click on this transform node, and then simply drag this and connect this with the multi-merge. Now go over to the multi-merge, and from here, make sure you know the layer which is connecting. This is the transform layer, and you can also see this highlight showing you that this is the layer that you have selected. Now go over to apply mode and change this to lighten. So you will see that this will go in the background. All right, now I'm going to add in another multi-merge, and this is so that I can just have a little more better, or you can say cleaner way of working. Otherwise, you can just keep using the multi-merge if you want, but I'm now going to create a radar, so it's better so that I separate it from the rest of the text and the image. So for this one, first of all, let's drag in an ellipse like this, and let's drag in a background. Connect the ellipse with the background and the background with the multi-merge tool. Now over here in the background, I'm just simply going to change the red all the way to 1. And let's go over to ellipse and change the soft edge to 0.01. And over here, I'm going to unselect the solid, as you can see, and let's also change the border width to 0.01, like this. All right, now let's go over to multi-merge, and from here, I'm going to select the background and then position this right here. And now I'm going to add in another ellipse, another background. Once again, change this to red, connect the ellipse with the background. And while you have your background selected, press Control Space and search for grid and add in this first grid. All right. And now I'm going to add in another ellipse, but this time I'm going to connect this with the grid one, with this grid over here. And now I'm going to connect this grid with the multi-merge. So this is how it looks at the moment, but we're going to change some settings. Over here in this ellipse 2, I'm just simply going to unselect the solid. Then over here in the ellipse 3, I'm going to keep everything as it is. But over here in the grid, we're going to make some changes. So let's go over here to row cells and change this to 50. Change the column cells to 50 as well. Change the major line spacing to 0. And over here, I'm also going to change the red to 0.5 and just change everything else to 0. Now I'm also going to change the fill to minus 0.044, the zoom to 0.7, and the rotation or rotate to 40. All right, and now you can go over to multi-merge, click on this grid, and what you can do is just simply copy the settings from the background 2 that we have and just paste them right here for both X and Y. So you can see this is how it looks. Now you will see that over here, if you think that this is too sharp, go over to merge, and from here slightly just reduce the size slightly like this. So now you will see it looks like it's part of this circle over here. Now we're going to add in another ellipse, and once again a background that will be red. Make sure to connect them. And while you have your background selected, press Control Space and search for duplicate over here. Now let's go over to ellipse 4, this ellipse over here. And from here, let's first of all change the soft edge to 0.02. Let's change the border width to 0.01 and unselect the solid. And let's go over to duplicate now and change the copies to 4 and the size to 0.7. Now go ahead and connect the duplicate to multi-merge 2, and this is how it looks. But once again, you can go over here, copy the same settings that we had like this, and this fits perfectly. Okay, now we're going to add a radar for this. So let's drag in a polygon, a background, and a transform. Make sure to connect the polygon with the background as well. Now go over here and change the soft edge to 0.05. And now let's go over to transform. And from here, we're going to change the pivot. So you can move the pivot right here in this center. And first of all, let's just connect this. So make sure to connect this with the multi-merge. Go over to multi-merge. And once again, we're going to copy the same settings from here. And now let's go ahead and create a shape like this. And let me just move this right here and this one right here as well. Let's move this somewhere around here and this one somewhere around here. Click on this and then slightly move this and then go over to background and change this to red as well. Now, while we are at transform, just make sure that this is at center. Now, right click on your angle, go to modify with and click on anim curves. Go over to this modifiers tab. Keep this at transition, but change this to easing, this to sine and sine. And if you play this, this is how it will look. Now, if you want this to move in this direction, what you can do is simply click on invert transform. And this will move in this direction. And now all of this that we just created, let's slightly move this right here like this. And now what you can do is just select all of these, all the ones that we had for this radar, and you can just press Control G and this will group them all together. This will create a group. Now you can just double click and this will open up the group. And from here, you can click on this cross and this will close. And this is just so that we can have a cleaner look on our nodes. Now that we are done with this radar, we don't need to do anything. So that's why I just grouped this together. But one thing I want to do is create another radar. So what I can do is just simply click on this group, press Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste. And this will create a copy for this group. So now you can just connect this like this. And now that we have this group over here, you can double click and go over here and you can now change some settings. So go over to the multi-merge and from here, let's change the position, move this right here. And for this one, let's reduce the size as well. So let's go with 0.8 like this. And now that we have the settings like this, you need to copy the settings to all of these other layers. So let's do that. All right, perfect. And now over here in the grid, let me just change this to 0.7, or let me just increase this a little bit so that this is within the circle. But now what you can do is just so that this is a little bit different, you can always go over to the grid, change some settings from here. So let's reduce this to 26 by 30. Let's reduce the red a little bit more. Let's go over here in this background, reduce this, reduce the color for this one as well, a little bit. And over here in this transform, let me just go ahead and click on this invert. And let's go over to modifiers with, and I'll just change this to quad. So just so that we can have a different look. And the one over here, this ellipse over here, let's change the soft edge to 0.02. See how this looks. So you can see we have a different kind of shape, but you can see how easy it was to just simply copy this and create this. And you can also go ahead and create more if you want to, but these are the two ones that I'm going to just use in this video. So if we just play this at the moment, this is how it looks. All right, now that we have these two groups done, make sure you click on this group, the one at the end, and press Control Space, search for radial blur. And over here, we're going to keep this at 0.4, but once again, press Control Space and search for light rays like this. Now, make sure that you have this connected and click on this alpha limits effect. And over here, let's change the length to 0, the soften to 1, and the brightness to 0.5. So this is the kind of effect that you will get. And finally, we're going to add in this transform node. Now go all the way to 0 and create a keyframe at size and change this to 1.1. Now let's go over to 10 and change this to 1.0 once again. But this time we're also going to create a keyframe at center, and let's go over to 50 and change the Y to 2. Now let's go over to spline, make sure that we select the transform. First of all, let's select the displacement, select these keyframes, hit S on the keyboard and move this a little bit in. So let's see how this looks. Perfect. Now let's do the same thing with the size over here. Perfect. So we have our composition up till now done, and you can see how this looks at the moment. Perfect. Now we're going to add in another fusion composition, but this time we're going to change the clip duration to 4, like this, and move this right here. And now we're going to add some 3D effects in this composition. So right click over here and click on Open in Fusion page, and let's zoom in a little bit. And first of all, let's drag in a shape. Now I'm going to press 1 on my keyboard, and this is how it will look over here in the preview panel. Let's change the shape to cube. So over here, unselect this lock width and height and change the width to 0.2, the height to 1.5, and the depth to 0.5. So this is how it will look. Now let's go over to transform. And one more thing, we need to change the red to 0.5 and change the green and blue to 0. Now let's go over to transform and first of all add 0. Let's go ahead, create a keyframe at Y and change this to -2. And let's also create keyframes at X and Y over here, but change this to 5 and 5. Make sure both of these are 5. And now let's go over to 20 frames and change the Y to -0.4. All right. Now let's go over at 30 frames. And from here, I'm going to add a keyframe at 0 for the Z. And we're going to change the X to 15 and the Y to 15 as well. Now let's go over at 40 and change the Z to 1.5 over here. And this X to 0 and the Y to 90. Now make sure you select your shape 3D and click on this merge 3D node. And while you have your merge 3D selected, press Control Space and search for render 3D. Now you can connect this with the media out and see how this looks. So this is how it looks. Now I'm just simply going to select this and press 1 again so that this is gone. And now we can add in a light. So we can add a spotlight. Over here, we have this option for spotlight. You can just drag this over here. But if you don't see it over here, you can press Control Space and search for it. Now connect the spotlight with the Merge 3D and let's start animating. So first of all, at 30, go over at 30 and create some keyframes in transform. So let's change the Y to 1.217 and the Z to 2.6. But this time I'm going to create a keyframe at Z. And now let's change the X to -30 and create a keyframe over here. Now let's go over to 40 frames. And from here, I'm going to change the Z to 2.7, the X to -54. Now go over to render and click on lighting and shadows so that you will see how this effect looks. So this is how it looks. Now let's go over to spline and do some animations for the shape 3D. First of all, let's see the Y. Select the keyframes, hit S on the keyboard. Do the same thing for Z, the X rotation, and the Y rotation. So we are done with this animation, as you can see. Okay, while you have your render 3D selected, click on this merge node and let's drag this a little bit side. So now what we can do over here is add a rectangle and a background. Let's move this up. And also, while you have your background selected, press Control Space and search for duplicate, and this will get connected. Connect your rectangle with the background as well, and change the background red to 0.7. Now in the rectangle, let's go ahead and change the soft edge to 0.3. And let's go over to 40 frames. And over here, I'm going to add a keyframe at center. And this time, let's change this to 0.02 and this one to minus 0.15. And now let's go over to 50 frames. Keep this at 0.02, but change the Y to 0.91. Now let's go over at duplicate and make sure that you connect this with the merge. And over here at duplicate, let's go ahead and change the copies to 10. Then over here at 60, let's create a keyframe at center like this. Change the Y to 0.092 or 3, 0.093 like this. And now let's go over to 70. Let's change this to 0.35 or 36. Okay, so one thing you need to change in the rectangle is also the width. So change this to 0.1 and the height to 0.01. Okay, so over here you can see we need to change the soft edge to, let's say, 0.03 so that this is visible. Now let's go back to our duplicate. And over here we were at 60 and at 70 we were moving in. So this is how the animation works up till this point. But you need to go over to spline, click on the duplicate, make sure you unselect everything else, just select the displacement, and from here select these keyframes, hit S on the keyboard, but also slightly move them like this. Now let's add in another merge like this, make sure this is connected, and from here we're going to add in a text. And while you have your text selected, press Control Space and search for light rays, and now connect the light rays with the merge tool. Now over here in the light rays, we're going to select this alpha limits effect, change the length to 0, soften to 1, and the brightness, keep this at 0.3. Now over here in the text, we're going to type in 2023. The font that I'm using is Montserrat, add bold, and the size will be at 0.3. Now let's go over to text, and over here in the layout, we're going to create some keyframes. So let's go over at 40, create a keyframe at center. And from here, let's change the Y to minus 0.165. Now let's go over to 50 and change the Y to 0.5. Then over here at 60 frames, create another keyframe, but don't change anything. But then at 70, let's go ahead and change this to 1.207. And now we're going to add in another text. So for this, I'm going to add in another merge node, another text. And once again, we're going to attach the light rays and connect it with the merge 3. This time the text will be 2024. And I'm going to copy the settings from light rays and paste them right here. And let's change this to Montserrat at bold. And once again, size will be at 0.3. And once again, we're going to do the same animation, but this time we're going to go over at 60 and move the Y to minus 0.165 and create a keyframe right here. But now at 70, we're going to move this in, so 0.5, and this is where it will stay now. Now let's go over to spline and select our text. So let me just hide everything else. First, let's start with the text one. And over here, as you can see, this is how it looks. So I'm going to select this, hit S on the keyboard for both of these, and let's move them right here. And now I'm going to do the same thing for the text too. So if you play this, this is how it looks. And finally, we're going to add in a brightness node. So select your merge tree and click on this brightness over here. And now let's go over to 80 frames, create a keyframe at gain, and then at 90, let's go over at 90 and change this to 0. So this will fade out. Perfect. So now let's go back to the main timeline and see how everything looks. So this is how it looks. Perfect. So this was it for this video. I hope you found this video useful, and I will see you in the next one.